Hello folks, today we have Magnus Carlsen, greatest human player on earth, doing what he does best, and that is playing like the worst human player on earth in the opening, in this bullet game, up against Eric Hansen, who is playing white. Carlsen putting his knight right back to g8 in this Alekhine's defense. Not the most popular move for black here, and for good reason, but how much experience does Hansen really have trying to punish black for playing this line? Not much, I'll wager, especially against a player of Carlsen's caliber. But Hansen does play correctly for a couple of moves, but after c6, he gets overly cautious and plays h3. The engine does not like this move at all. There are much better and more active ways to deal with this supposed threat of bishop to g4, like bishop c4 for example, and if black were to try bishop g4 here, well now we got bishop takes f7 check, king takes, and then knight g5 check, picking up the bishop with the queen, a nice little pattern to remember. You just may use this in one of your games. But we have the overly cautious h3. Hansen is kind of nervous. He is playing Carlsen after all. Bishop to f5, which is followed by another substandard move from Hansen. He plays bishop to d3. Not really clear why this isn't a great move until you see the engine line, which is g4, pushing the bishop back to g6, and then e6, sacking a pawn. But what do you get in return as white? Well, it's going to be a bit awkward for black to complete his development. He's got to move a lot of things before this bishop can be developed, and this pawn on e6 is just a big fat target. This is not a great pawn structure to have in the opening. The engine says white is almost a pawn better here, but it's understandable that Hansen didn't see this idea. It is a bullet game after all. We have bishop to d3, making life easy for Carlsen, which means he's going to make Eric Hansen's life hell. Bishop takes d3, queen takes d3, e6 now, a couple of very normal looking developing moves, and after knight to d7, we have another odd decision. Apparently Hansen thinks there is just too much pressure on his e-pawn now. There's not, but he now feels compelled to capture on d6, which just helps Carlsen develop his pieces. Bishop takes d6, we have c4. Maybe Hansen was toying with the idea of d5, but after knight g to f6, Carlsen has too much coverage of that square, and he's going to get to castle on the next move. It's just not happening. And now Hansen finds himself in a position that is probably inferior for white than even the main line of Alekhine's defense. But it's still anyone's game, but probably Carlsen's, who plays rook to e8 here. We have bishop to g5 with the pin. Okay, it's a reasonable move. But after h6, now Hansen plays a very timid looking move. He plays bishop to d2. Makes me wonder if this is a mouse slip. Bishop to e3 is better. Maybe he wants to keep this half-open file clear for his rook. I don't know. The engine said bishop to h4 was best because black is in no position to push with g5. In some openings he can get away with that, but apparently not here. And now Carlsen, smelling blood, strikes in the center with e5, setting the stage for a major blunder from Eric Hansen. Rook a to d1. Carlsen can now win material, but he missed his first chance to do so, although he spotted this idea a move later. See if you can find the winning combination that Carlsen missed here. Pause the video and give it your all. e4 immediately would have won material, for if knight takes e4, rook will take on e4, and after rook takes e4, there's the beautiful knight to c5, taking advantage of the fact that this queen's undefended. The best way for white to proceed here would actually be to just take that knight out, which allows bishop to h2 check, which will pick up the undefended white queen. After the king takes, queen takes d3. Here you want to play rook to d4. The queen will go to e2. The bishop will go to f4. The queen will pick up a pawn on b2. And when all the smoke clears, white has a rook and a bishop for the queen, which is not typically enough, and this position is no exception. Black is winning. But Carlsen did not spot this idea right away. Instead of the winning e4 here, he played queen to c7. Hansen pushed his d-pawn, and then Carlsen saw it. He pushed e4, and this version is even worse for white than the variation we just saw. After knight takes, and Carlsen captured the knight on e4, Eric Hansen went ahead and resigned. He saw what was coming. After rook takes e4, knight c5, forking the queen and rook, and in this variation there is no option to take out the knight on c5 because this pawn is moved. You're just going to be down a whole piece after queen to e2, knight c takes e4. So thank you for your viewing. I hope you enjoyed this brief yet educational encounter between Magnus Carlsen and Eric Hansen. Please check out my other videos for more coverage of the games of Magnus Carlsen, some absolutely insane games played by computer engines, and all things chess related that I find fascinating. See you on the next video.